If you have heard that creating an online course might be the key to skyrocketing your business revenue, you might be right, but you might also be wrong. Yes, online education is a huge industry, and yes, there is potential for you to make a lot of money doing that. But the odds are stacked against you if you are missing three things. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Success Summit interview series. I'm your host, Kelly Sinclair, a.k.a. the Fairy Brand Mother, working with passionate entrepreneurs to help you create visibility for your brand, your business, and your purpose. And my guest today is the wonderful Emily Hall. She is the founder and CEO of E+M Creative, which is a presentation design studio focused on entrepreneurs, helping entrepreneurs deliver their message in a way that drives both impact and ROI. We are going to have a super juicy conversation today about all things online education. And I love that we started by calling out this whole desire to create online courses because you help people with that, but there's a specific path that they have to follow.
Yes. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Online courses are something that so many people want to get into, but it becomes this big confusing space once you get in there. So much information coming at you. It's so hard to know what to do. And so we work with entrepreneurs, we work with established businesses that want to add or expand or optimize the education that they've got so that their education really works for them long term, and it becomes a strategic part of their business, not just a one and done quick cash injection. It becomes part of a bigger strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, I love to get to the why behind people's businesses. So tell me why you love what you do and how you came about it.
Yeah. So it actually all started back when I was in college. So my degree is in public health education. So essentially creating mass level population behavior change through education. That was what I studied. That's what I love. After that, I ended up on the corporate side of healthcare, more on the business side of communication. So building presentations it's a big national company, building presentations for essentially everybody director and above across all the business units, whether they were doing something internal or external. So big national stages to big sales presentations to everything in between, including a lot of education since it was healthcare. And that's where I really focused in on, okay, based on, we want to make sure that people are changing behavior. We want to make sure that they're taking action on what we want them to do and what they're looking to get out of it. But also we need to make sure that it works for the business and it works for the long-term strategy of that. And so that ROI is really the key in sustainability in education as a business tool. And so kind of bringing those two things together, I launched my business a few years ago, working, originally just with corporate clients. COVID shook that up a little bit. And so now I work with both people in the online entrepreneur space and also still with corporate clients as well. And it's a really fun way to kind of bring together all of those things, bring together the behavior change psychology, bring together the science of design and best practices around that, around storytelling, around all of that, in a way that really moves the needle for people to be able to leverage education as a tool for growth.
That is so good because it's not just about presentations need to look pretty and have visuals and aid to get people to learn, but that piece around behavior change is identifying what you want people to do with the information that you're giving them. And I have a background in PR, working more on that reputation management side of things, where literally everything that we were trying to do is also to help influence behavior change. And it's hard. I have to say that it's one of the hardest things to do because people either are really strongly in one of two camps on an issue, or they're neutral and they don't really care. So you have to give them that reason to care and then tell them what to do with that afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gets really tricky. And it really comes down to, how do you do that level of audience research to know who's in the room, and how do you then structure what you're going to share, structure your talk, structure your course, whatever it is, so that it doesn't alienate everyone, but it also gives everyone what they need. How do you weave that in a way that is focused on connection, focused on story, but also gives them the tangible things that they need to take action and inspires them to do that. It's kind of it's a fun little dance that we have to do. And it's different for every business, for every speaker, for every audience. I mean, you can have one kind of signature talk that you can give in front of 10 different people, and you can take 10 different angles on it, because the audience is different. They're looking for something different out of it. They prioritize something different. And so what works and what's going to drive one segment to take action won't work for another. And so being able to customize that and really stepping out of the, what do I want to tell my audience perspective, and into the, what does my audience need from me in order to get to where they want to go, in order to get to where I want them to go. That's a really big shift, but it's so hard to do, because it's so hard to get out of your own head, out of your own expertise. And so that's a lot of what we do with our clients, is objectively pulling that expertise out and structuring it in a way that's strategic. That's just really hard to do when you're so close to it.
Oh, 100% for sure. And so since we do want to help people succeed in this area, we kind of teased it at the beginning. There's 3 core pieces that need to be sort of figured out and in place in order for someone to be successful in this online education space. Do you want to walk us through what those are?
Yeah. So with online courses specifically, so there's lots of different kinds of online education. Online courses are, they're hosted somewhere. They're generally done self-paced. They're kind of on their own. They are typically a way for people to access your expertise without having you there. So we see this a lot in when businesses want to give people a more accessible way to work with them, either price point wise or time commitment wise, or they want to be able to scale up and be able to meet a larger audience. So that's typically where we kind of see those two reasons that people create courses. But the 3 things that everyone needs to have, and people can come in with established businesses. We see this all the time. We see, dog trainers and artists, and anybody can make an online course. But making sure that you have these 3 things is really, really going to make sure that you're successful. The first one is making sure that you have the authority to teach on your topic. So a lot of people will come in. We get people that approach us all the time wanting to create online courses. And the first thing that we ask is, what makes you qualified to teach this? What is your expertise? What is your authority? If you can't convince us, you can't persuade us, there's no way that your audience is going to trust that. When people take online courses, one of the things that really is a requirement of adult learners is they have to know that they are in the right spot and learning from the right person. And so weaving that authority in is really important. And if you don't have that from the beginning, it makes it very, very tough. The second thing is making sure that you've got a tested and repeatable framework. And so this is why existing businesses tend to be very successful with online courses, is because they've got something established. It's hard to take, if you are, an online coach, it's hard to say, okay, here's my process. Here's what I do with all my clients. Typically when we get to session 3, I ask them this and they do this and then I modify it this way. There's a lot of individualization that happens when working as a service provider, as a coach, as a whatever it is. And so knowing where those kind of turnoff points for students might be is very, very important to building a course experience. The second that a student feels like they have skipped a step, or they might not have their question answered, they're going to disengage. And so knowing what that framework is, knowing that it's repeatable, being able to trust that your course is going to take your audience through this transformation without you, is one of the biggest reasons that people have a hard time doing that, because they don't know how to do that. And so having experience with whatever your framework is, having the data to back it up, knowing that you're actually getting people those transformations. And then if you're wanting to build an online course, kind of keep that in mind as you're doing it, and note those, what are the biggest spots that people have questions? What are the biggest spots that, that they need help with? But what do they identify as those spots that they need help, and being able to frame things that way. So that having that framework is really, really important for building an online course.
And the point that you were, just to expand on that for a second, because I think that one of the key things I just heard you say is that this is a lot easier when you're a little more established, when you have run actual clients through it. So thinking about like that, the first time you sell something, you have to be confident that it's going to work, right? So as a coach, the first time I sell a coaching package, I struggle with like, oh, but I don't know exactly what the result is going to be, but what I know to be true is that I will make sure that I show up and I serve and I answer questions, and it will go in the right way. Right. And you don't have that same ability if you're doing a completely like hands-off program. So there's sort of ways to transition into that too. If you want to launch a group program, potentially, I know one of the things I did was a live version of my course a few times before I have still yet to completely like pre-record, put the materials together and make it a like self-paced experience, because that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And there are ways to even, I mean, a lot of people will have courses where it's, you know, an expansion of their framework. So they just need to test one part of it. And so you can test smaller pieces of kind of a bigger comprehensive framework by doing smaller things like workshops or trainings or things like that, where you can get that feedback. You can make sure that it's working. You can make sure that you've got the right audience in the room. Because when you take somebody through one time, that's fine, but they might be an exception, not the rule. And so the more that you do it, the more data you gather on, okay, what is the true population here? What are really kind of the average of their issues? And then you can build your course to that average and not to the exceptions. And so the more that you have that, the smarter you can build your course.
Right. Okay. So what's step number 3?
The third one is having an audience. So this is a tricky one, and this dips into marketing. So feel free to jump in wherever you want. We don't actually do a lot with marketing. We focus on, you know, building out the education experiences. Marketing is a whole other beast that there are many more people that are much more qualified on it than we are. But we actually don't generally work with people who don't have an established audience, because it's kind of the other side of that course creation coin. You can build something, but if you don't have a way to get the right people in the door, they're not going to get that transformation. So what I mean by that is, if you build this with this audience in mind, if you market it incorrectly, or if you don't have an audience, if you have an audience of, you know, if you've got like 10 people on your email list, or, you know, a small presence, or, you know, not a way to access a bigger audience through other people's platforms or other things, it means that, one, you're not going to see the results that you're looking for, because you're not going to have the volume that, you know, that marketing is going to need to generate the revenue that you're wanting. But it also might be you don't have enough to capture the right people. So if your messaging is a little bit off, or if your audience is kind of focused in the wrong direction, like if you've got population A over here and you built your course for population B, if you're marketing to population A and you get somebody in there, you didn't build it for them. They may not respond the same way. Going back to that behavior change psychology, there might be other things that, you know, they prioritize more, or they think are more important, and so they're not going to get the same results that population B is going to. And so having a really solid marketing plan helps to, one, make sure that you get the volume that you want to see those business goals achieved, but also making sure that once the people are in there, that they're the right people. They're the right people to get that transformation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like you have to have the right people to get feedback. You need to do, like for market research or anything, how do you create messaging if you don't really know who you're talking to? And I see this all the time too. People are like, oh, I'm going to build an online course and then sell it, instead of building it alongside a group of people who it's actually for, because you have opportunities. You don't need a huge audience. You just need to have an engaged audience that actually is the right fit, like you said, for the program that you're creating, so that you can talk about it while you're building it. You can maybe bring some people alongside the process of building it, and then you'd have people who are ready for it and wanting it and waiting for it when you actually get around to launching it. It's that kind of like breadcrumb strategy of like, talk about it, say you're going to do it, talk about why it matters, get them like interested, maybe get them on a wait list, and then get them in, versus like, ta-da, this thing I made in my back room is done. Do you want it now? And they're like, I don't know what, like you haven't mentioned it yet. Like,
yeah, it's hard. And it's hard when, especially people that are newer into the online space, they want course creation to be the first thing that they do. And oftentimes that can end up kind of biting you in the long run, because you don't understand your online audience at all. You may not have an online audience to understand. It may evolve as you go. You may shift your framework to meet, you know, things and meet your audience in a virtual space as opposed to in person, if you do things like that. So there are a lot of different factors that can happen when moving into the online education space. There are a lot of different variables that come up, and sometimes you don't know what they are. And so being able to spend time getting to that audience, building relationships, the same way that you do when you're building any other part of any business. You know, you have to have those things in place in order for your offer to land. It's the same thing with a course. And so that's really kind of the third thing that's really important for success in the online course space. And having an online course is having that audience ready.
Okay. So just to summarize that, number one was authority. Number two was a framework that is proven and been used before. And number three is having an audience, the right fit audience, and you know where they are.
Yeah.
Totally. I love that. So what would be the most surprising thing that people figure out when they work with you?
People don't. So there are a couple of things. So we work with people basically from like their pile of sticky notes all the way through setting up their courses, their workshops, their webinars, whatever they are. So at the beginning with course creation, or really creating any sort of education in that content development phase, people don't realize how much knowledge they have. So they think that they've got, okay, I've got my, my rough outline of here's what I want to teach, here are my modules, let's do this, perfect. And then once we get into it and we look at, okay, who's your audience? What do they need? What do you need them to do? How is this going to fit in with the rest of your offer suite? We really start with kind of that business focus. And then we move into, all right, let's from that transformation and where your audience is, we back the content through so that we're really picking your audience up where they're at, moving them to where we want them to be for your next offer, and to get that transformation that they're looking for. They don't realize how much they know in that. So that content development phase, I tell people, you think it's going to take you like, I don't know, 2 days, it'll take you 4. Like it always takes double what people think because it's so hard to get your expertise out of your head. And this is just the nature of being good at something. Your brain has all of these shortcuts. It does that because you learn things. And so the steps that a newbie's brain needs to take in order to connect certain dots, your brain skips over that. It works more efficiently. So you understand things quicker, you see the relationships more easily. And when we really back out to that really granular level that the students need, that beginner level, you don't realize how much there is. And anytime you miss a step in that, that's an opportunity for your audience to disengage. So when a student is going through a course, I'm sure that anybody listening has experienced this. When you get to a course and something doesn't resonate or you feel like you've missed something, you're like, okay, I no, never mind. It's not worth your resources, it's not worth your time, because you're like, this is not going to work. I missed something, I failed. This is not the right fit. Okay, I need to solve this another way, and you move on. And so any of those opportunities for disengagement, that's what we want to limit. And so being able to say, we really want to make sure that, if it's 12 steps, we get into, all 12 steps. Whereas if you were to explain it to someone, you might skip a few because your brain knows that, these are bundled together and these really go together. Or, you forget about this because it just happens automatically. So really making sure that those, all those little nuggets of expertise that can come out do when you're building an online course. That tends to be what surprises people the most in that content development stage.
And so that's exactly why you should work with a third party who can look at that and go, okay, I don't know this. Like, you need to walk me through how to make this happen. And if you can explain it to me, I can also, with Emily's expertise, she can also like break that down into, are these two things or is this one thing? Or like, how have you, because she's obviously got this amazing brain for how like you compartmentalize those things and the way that you understand how the brain works, which is just mind-blowing. So smart, lady. I love it. The second thing that I wanted to say about that is, of course, the reason to create online education, if you are a heart-centered entrepreneur, is not so that you can make bundles of money and retire when you're 40. It's so that you can help people with the things that you know, right? And you can't help people if they don't finish your program. And they won't finish your program if you didn't do it properly. No.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. It's tough because people, a lot of times in course creation, that they look at the wrong metrics. So when you look at, the number of sales and the number of enrollments and the number of things like that, those aren't course creation metrics. Those are marketing metrics. Your course creation metrics are things like drop-off points, completion rates, survey completion. It's really, really good to layer those in. And that's another thing that we do, is we layer in those data collection tools throughout the course creation process. So, you can, do quizzes, you can measure how much somebody is actually learning, tracking when questions come in, things like that. So there are a lot of different ways to be able to optimize your course creation on the front end to be able to make sure that it's working. And that becomes then in turn a really good marketing thing. You can say, we've got these high completion rates and we got this, and we've got this. And, it allows you to continue to adjust it as your audience adjusts, and adjust it as, your your expertise grows.
Okay, so this whole conversation is just making me reminding me about this one little thing that's on my like to-do list of turning my program into like a digital program, because I've run it and people have gone through it and I've got like feedback and everything. So like pause, we'll come back. You and I will have a conversation about that for sure. And I know we could go on and on about this topic forever because it's a huge discussion point, but I love what you laid out. I think you've really simplified it for people. If people want, do you have a resource for people if they want to connect with you around online education?
Yeah, so Instagram is probably the best place, at E+M Creative, E, the letter E, and the letter M.
I'll put the links in here.
Yeah, my name's Emily. My husband always misspells it and he'll put like EM. So that is the best place for that. And feel free to send me a message, ask any questions. We've got lots of good stuff there. Lots of good things coming up for 2022. We're going to be rolling out some really, really cool new education resources. I'm excited for that. And yeah, I'm excited to share more about kind of the other side of course creation that's a little bit less talked about, the actual creating of the course itself.
Oh, I love that. I'm excited. I can't wait to follow along, continue following along on your journey. Thank you so much for being here, for dropping all of your wisdom. We will wrap it up and you guys can catch us on the next video, and make sure you connect with Emily. All of her links will be below on this video so that you can continue to learn like the real behind the scenes of online education.